Episode 21 of the Hockey Podcast, the show. Doug is officially legal at this point.
What do you mean legal?
It's 21.
It's 21.
Do whatever it wants.
Well, wake up.
That's good. I did not need to wake up. Thank you for that.
I can't believe I missed that.
Episode 21. We are well into the season now. Lots of stuff going on. It's been a very exciting start to this year. I think we all thought we saw the goal of the year earlier, a couple weeks ago, and we've talked about that. We'll get
Mr. Hurdle.
But we saw one this week that certainly rivals it. I mean, it was different, so we'll get more into that later on. We saw a guy retire out of nowhere.
Yeah, that was weird.
We've seen some good teams, at least on paper, get off to horrible starts, and we've seen some really bad teams get off to good starts.
I think weird comes to mind. It's the first thing I think of is weird.
That's your word to describe the season?
So far.
Okay.
Weird.
But it's been very entertaining.
Yeah, because, we bring it up every week, but Philadelphia, I mean, weird, right?
We're going to keep bringing it up, too, until they start winning. I mean, they fired their coach, and it hasn't made a single difference.
Well, I go back to our previews at the start of the season, and we had a little higher aspirations for Philadelphia in that division than what's going on right now.
Yeah, I think that division will be fine. I'm starting to wonder about Philadelphia. I don't know what the deal is there. And it's still early. We'll get more into them, too. But I think the rest of that division will be okay. Although, you know what, to be honest, I have some questions about the Rangers, too. I mean, we'll get into them as well.
Yeah, I mean, oof.
That's a team I was really high on.
Well, let's slam on the brakes and go to the topic that everybody's talking about.
Is that
right
what your
now.
brakes sound like? Because I would get my car fixed if that's the sound your car makes when you stop.
Well, and I go into Amco. I go, my car's going,
that's good.
and the guy goes, oh, that's just your brakes.
He puts one hand on the security button and is like, what was that, sir? Yeah, I don't know if you want to classify this as hits from behind or what, but there have been, it seems like a decent amount of suspensions here, and we're not even 10 games in to the schedule. So it just brings up that debate. I mean, anytime you have this many suspensions, you have the people on one side saying, you got to get these players out of the game. You have the people on the other side saying, this sort of hit is part of the game, and you can't ask guys to change. I fall somewhere in the middle. I think most rational people do. So where do you fall?
Well, first of all, you don't take a guy out of a game because he hits. I have just a very basic principle of that's wrong because it's part of the game. You know, they want to take out fighting. Now they want to take let's put on tutus and figure skate.
Yeah, I don't think we want to take hitting all the way out of the game. But let's just use a couple examples that we have from this week. And
okay. I have a very
this is going to be amazing, I can tell.
I feel really strongly about it.
Good.
And I just the clamping down.
Isn't that a band from the early 2000s?
Is that a band?
Yeah. I think they're Armenian.
System of a Down. There we go. Yeah, Armenians. Okay, go ahead.
I was very intrigued by your point. Let's just use a couple examples. I'm not even necessarily going to debate how bad they were, but Patrick Coletta already has a 10-game suspension this year. Max Lapierre got a 5-game suspension for hitting Dan Boyle of the Sharks from behind. Of course, that touches off just a big brawl, and now Cody McLeod of Colorado is going to get suspended this week, maybe even by the time you've heard this, for a hit on Nicholas Kronwall. And I guess the point that comes up is, let me take this angle that I don't agree with, just to potentially get you angry, because that's really all I want to do. This isn't even a recording. I'm just here to get you angry. There's the thought that all great rivalries in the sport have started, or at least at some point been spurred on by dirty play that's cultivated bad blood between teams, and it just keeps building over repeated games against each other. And
it's not what rivalries are built on.
I agree.
Rivalries
are built out there.
Rivalries are built on playing the same team over and over again, and you bump and you bruise, and you bump and you bruise, and it's just that competition of, crosstown rivalries or division rivalries, because you see them so often, and you're fighting for the same prize. You're fighting for the first place in that division, and you're seeing these guys over and over again, and that's where it builds. It's not because you develop dirty plays. I mean, I don't even want to hear that word. It's either you play clean or you don't play.
Okay, so now I know where you come out on this, because the example I've heard a lot is Colorado-Detroit. Great rivalry in the mid to late 90s, and really still a decent rivalry. Detroit ended Colorado's run at 82-0 this week.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the people that look at that rivalry say, yeah, it kept going and building, but it started with that Claude Lemieux hit on Chris Draper. And wherever you come out on that hit, certainly Detroit fans didn't like it, and Detroit's players didn't like it, and that just seemed to kind of catapult everybody into craziness.
But to me, the way you describe, to me, that's revenge. That's not rivalry.
Okay.
That's revenge. Oh, I'm going to get you because you hit my guy. That's a revenge motivation. That's not a rivalry. A rivalry of two teams because you're competing for the same thing.
Well, I agree. To me, the rivalry starts with, like you said, there's close proximity. Pittsburgh, Philadelphia are a great example. Or there's a history in the playoffs. I'll use Pittsburgh and Washington. I know I'm using a lot of Pittsburgh examples here, but that's a rivalry that has built up over the years, and it hasn't really been dirty. I mean, I know Crosby got hurt against the Capitals, but that wasn't really a dirty hit necessarily. It was Crosby versus Ovechkin.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got them out in the Western Conference as well. We're seeing one develop between Phoenix and L.A. because they've competed in the playoffs, because they're two of the closest teams to each other.
Right. I mean, there's a distinct division between revenge and rivalry and standing up for your teammate, and there's a bad blood and all that stuff, but dirty play just doesn't come in my vocabulary. I think what's happening, though, is that we're oversensitive with guys faster, bigger, stronger, and I look at the Dan Boyle hit and I look at the Cronwall hit. Both those guys were bent over before they were hit up against the board, so it looked uglier than they were. They turned, in my opinion, almost at the last second so that their numbers were exposed. And this is my big thing. In the game, the guy that's going in the corner, because this is where a lot of it happens, guy going in the corner has just as much responsibility as the guy that's coming in to hit him. If you don't shoulder check, if you go in with your numbers exposed, if you don't go in on an angle so your body's perpendicular to the board so you can absorb a hit, then you're putting yourself in a very bad situation. Guys coming 30 miles an hour, all of a sudden you turn. It's hard to pull up at the last second.
So how much of this is avoidable? Because, I mean, it's been an ugly scene early on this season when you have Dan Boyle leaving on a stretcher and
right.
Nicholas Cronwall was laying on the ice, and Jacob Trouba too. I mean, that was a completely different play, but that's another guy on a stretcher. So the person that doesn't watch hockey but watches Sports Center or whatever, they're like, oh, there's another hockey player hurt. That's not the image the league wants. And from my perspective, they're doing all they can. I mean, there's that argument of, well, we don't want to lose guys to suspensions. Patrick Coletta shouldn't be suspended for his hit on Jack Johnson or Lapierre. I mean, you can't lose those guys. But if you don't suspend them, especially their repeat offenders, which is a whole different thing,
sure.
Then you're losing good players that are getting hit. Now, I agree with what you're saying. If you turn your back to a guy that's coming at you at full speed, what is he supposed to do? I mean, this is a debate in football right now, too.
Well, and that's it's nothing new, because this conversation, happened a couple of seasons ago, is that guys are purposely turning and willing to take the hit because they know there's going to be a penalty.
That's got to go away, though. I mean, you see how badly these guys are getting hurt.
Well, and I think also I see the stretchers coming out a lot quicker than it used to, because I think they're being very cautious and very precautionary because of the whole concussion issue that is another layer of the hitting issue. I mean, everybody's just so sensitive. Everybody's walking on rice paper. Nobody's just playing. They're all tense and they're all tight.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying about guys who are purposely putting themselves in position to draw a penalty, because, I mean, that happens. That's just the reality of the game. But I tell you, if I was in the league and I'm looking around and I'm seeing other guys, if I'm seeing Dan Boyle, and part of what happened to Boyle is he just kind of tripped as he was going towards the boards, and then Lapierre caught him. And again, he has a history with that team, and apparently he was saying he was going to do somking like that, or he was going to get the Sharks before the game.
Apparently.
Yeah, don't you love just allegedly and apparently for the whole story? But I don't know. There are clean hits in this game, and
they're beautiful.
They're what make this game great, really.
I saw one this morning at my son's practice.
Yeah.
It was an open ice hit. Nobody got hurt. It was just body on body, and it was awesome.
Well, that's where the rivalries come from, because in a NHL game, if you're coming in and you're trying to showboat or dangle or whatever, just trying to get by the defenseman, and he lays you out and it's clean, that's embarrassing for you. And everybody watching you saw it happen.
Right.
And then you come back. That's the good kind of revenge. So, I don't know. I guess it comes back to what the league can do, and I think they're doing all they can do. At some point, it's on the players, too.
But I don't want them clamping down so hard that they suffocate the game.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they're doing that yet. Are you afraid they're going to go there?
It has that feeling. I don't know if they're going to go there, but that's how it feels to me right now.
Now, before they get there, are we going to see guys? I don't want to pick on Coletta and Lapierre, but they're just the two most recent. I mean, Matt Cook would be another example I used.
Matt Cook, yeah.
But he changed his game. And he even apparently reached out to Coletta and was like, I'll help you change your game so you can stay in this league. Are we going to see guys like that get thrown out of the league before it gets to where you're talking about, or is it just inevitable?
Well, I think if you have a repeat offender, and then, Matt Cook played a certain style, and if that's your style and that style is always getting you in trouble, then yeah, you gotta look in the mirror and go, wait a minute, this just isn't working, because the league expects something, right? I teach my players, if you see numbers, let them have the puck. Skate by them. Let them have the puck.
Yeah. I mean, you can take the puck other way.
Because in youth hockey, a hit from behind is a 2 and a 10.
Yeah.
And it's just not worth it. Because on the other end, 2 and a 10, you've just hurt your team, and the other guy might get real seriously hurt. And is the other team scoring a goal worth that guy's injury? I don't think so.
Especially from like you said, a lot of these plays take place in the corner. Nobody's scoring from the corner anyway.
No.
And if they do, you need to talk to your goalie.
Yeah, and if you let a guy in a corner, if he turns his back to you and you see his numbers, you're going, crap. So you let him go. Where's he going? Behind the net. He's not going to score behind the net. And then, everybody else can set up to contain him. And you're right. In Canada, they have the little stop sign in youth hockey, have the little stop sign on the back of their jerseys. So that when you see that stop sign, it's like, whoop.
Don't they have that on the front of their Olympic jerseys? Or is that?
Oh, that was hurtful.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I think that just the last point on this is some of these guys, it's reputation. You're not seeing, like, Steven Stamkos isn't getting suspended or involved in a questionable hit that he put on somebody. Sidney Crosby isn't. Your skill guys aren't doing that. Claude Giroux isn't really – he's not being called in for a hearing because he elbowed somebody in the head.
Right.
Jonathan Taves. If anything, those guys are going to end up on the wrong side of those hits, and those are the guys you have to protect.
Yeah, and I'm just afraid that the physicality of the game is like, okay, we don't have the quote – look at that, air quotes. We don't have the quote-unquote –
air quotes for the podcast, always good.
Enforcers anymore. Okay, so then I'm not a skilled guy, but I'm a hard worker and I'm a decent hockey player, so how do I stay around? Well, I can be physical. Okay, now I can't be physical because everything's being called and everybody's getting suspensions. And 5-game suspension, if you're a decent player, that's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot of money.
If you're getting suspended, you might lose your spot. If you're one of those fringe players you're talking about, somebody else is going to play for you those 5 games.
That's right.
It's tough. It really comes down to, I would not want Brendan Shanahan's job.
No.
I just wouldn't. There's not an amount you could pay me. And B, I think, just in talking and hearing from players, it's all about consistency. And I don't know if they've found that consistency yet and what they're calling and what they aren't.
Remember that word because I'm going to bring it up in the next segment.
Ooh, more foreshadowing.
Aha.
You're tuned into the Hockey Podcast. Follow us on Twitter @HockeyPodcast for even more hockey news.
# do it.
Doug, if I were to ask you who the best hockey player in the history of the game is, what would your answer be?
Bobby Orr.
Interesting.
No, I got to qualify that. That's
okay.
Based on when I was born and what I was exposed to. There were some great players prior to that, but my guy is Bobby Orr. And you?
See, I was afraid you were going to turn my own question around on me. I don't know that I have an answer. I will say this. Now, I think you still have to go with Gretzky. I'm looking at his stats. He had 2,857 points. The next closest guy.
So it's all based on stats?
It's not all based on stats, but when you are 1,000 points ahead of second place, that helps. I don't know. I mean, you go points per game to me is the best way to look at it. And Mario Lemieux is 1.88 points per game. Wayne Gretzky's 1.92. I remember reading Wayne Gretzky's biography when I was like 8, and he said right in there himself, so I guess it would be an autobiography, that if any player could break his records, it would be Mario Lemieux if he could stay healthy. So to me, the debate is Gretzky, Lemieux, and I will give you Orr. I say it's those 3 guys. Gordie Howe is obviously a close 4th, and there's no shame in what Gordie Howe did. I mean, 1,850 points.
See, I'm not basing it on points.
Well, but some of it's got to be based on points.
Well, some of it. He had 915.
Well, you're a defenseman. Of course, none of your stats are based on points. Bobby Orr. I'm not gonna argue against Bobby Orr.
He was a defenseman. He had 37. He was a 30-goal scorer all the time.
The problem with this debate, as it comes up every time I have this with somebody, is you've got such different eras. And so Bobby Orr played in the late 60s and all through the 70s. Gretzky and Lemieux, for as much as Lemieux is probably my all-time favorite, played against smaller goalies with smaller pads.
To me, it's not about points. And the debate between Wayne Gretzky and Bobby Orr, to me, is the game. Bobby Orr changed the game.
You don't think Gretzky changed the game?
Kind of, sort of. He changed the game in the sense that he was a prolific scorer with a bodyguard every time he stepped on the ice.
It's true.
I mean, guys today, Stamkos doesn't have a bodyguard, and he's going to be the point-scoring champion again this year.
How dare you, first of all. Sidney Crosby is averaging 2 points a game as we speak.
I didn't mean to hurt your feelings,
No,
but
I'm emotionally
Bobby
wounded.
Orr changed the game.
Well, I have to throw this stat out there. 1970,
That
71
offensive,
season.
defensive guy.
This stat supports you.
Yes, I know.
Plus 124. His plus minus was plus 124. How do you have a plus 124? That is unreal. I've never seen anybody over a plus 40.
It's remarkable.
And that was his best statistical season in that category for sure, but he was a plus 86 once, a plus 84, a plus 80. I never saw him play, obviously. I mean, he played before I was born. I saw Gretzky play. Gretzky's best years, I was very young, so I don't know that I fully appreciated them. I saw Lemieux play a decent amount, and he was still, good near the end of his career. The players that I have seen where I've really been old enough to appreciate it that have been really good have been Crosby and Ovechkin.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both very impressive.
I like the fact that Bobby Orr could score. He was a defenseman, and he just changed the whole style of the game with the defenseman being able to carry the puck up and do what he did. I really, really appreciate what he did to the game to make the game more exciting. It took it out of that old traditional, defense plays here, offense plays there, when the game truly is a game of flow back and forth, and it's offense, defense, and all five guys have got to do it. Just because you're a center doesn't mean you don't play D. And just because you're a wing doesn't mean you don't play D. And just because you're a D doesn't mean you don't play O.
Well, just because you're a wing shouldn't mean you don't play D. It doesn't necessarily mean you don't not play D.
But, he changed the dynamics. The guy didn't just stand on the blue line. If you had the puck and he saw a hole, he took it.
Well, led the NHL in assists 5 times in 6 years, and 1 year he had 102 assists as a defenseman. He had 139 points 1 year. These are ridiculous numbers. His 1970-71 season, he had 139 points and he was a plus 124.
So right now I can hear all the THP listeners going, why are these two donkeys talking about Bobby Orr?
Well, I was going to present to you that there's a book you should read then if you're such a big Bobby Orr fan.
And I'm going to. I am going to read his new book, Orr, My Story. It just came out, I think, on Monday. And I listened to an interview with Mr. Orr, and his outlook on the game of hockey is phenomenal in the sense that when he played hockey, it was a lot of pond hockey, a lot of river hockey. Yes, he played organized hockey, at one point. But in the summer, he played baseball. And when he played, he was asked a question and go, well, what do you think the pond hockey? He goes, the pond hockey made me who I was. Because as kids, we would just play shinny hockey, and we're creative. We're allowing to be created. Youth hockey now, coaches at the squirt level are trying to install the 1-2-2 system. And he goes, you don't teach young kids to play the trap. That's not how you play hockey.
Please do not teach young kids to play the trap.
I know some youth coaches that want to teach their kids the 1-2-2. And are you kidding? Let them play. Let them be creative. And that's what he's all about. And I love it. And he's like, the one thing he wants to see in players is consistency. So when Doug Cannon steps on the ice, he doesn't want Doug Cannon to try to be Sidney Crosby, because I'm not Sidney Crosby and I never could play to his level. But I can play to my level, and I can play to my level game in and game out and make a contribution to my team.
There's that word again. Consistency. That's a callback to the first segment.
Right.
Look at that. I tell you one thing Bobby Orr has working in his favor. I'm looking at the cover of the book right now. It's probably the most iconic photo in hockey history.
Sports history.
Whoa, sports history. Well, it's up there with
it's
the
up there.
miracle. The
It's
miracle.
up there.
The miracle on ice. So NHL history for sure. It's got to be number one in NHL history. He's literally parallel to the ice, flying through the air after scoring
The
was
winning
that the
goal.
Stanley Cup winning goal.
1970 winning goal, yeah.
So you're not going to get an argument from me against Bobby Orr. My argument would be for Lemieux and probably Gretzky number one. But, boy, certainly the best defenseman ever, and the fact that he is in this discussion with the best forwards ever.
Well, and he also wants to talk about – he talks about respecting the game. He feels that a lot of young players don't respect the game. And then we bring up our buddy Nail Yakupov, and,
Got an assist this week.
Oh, he's got a point.
Yeah, no, he's on a one-game point streak. He's on fire.
Way to go, Nail. But I know some young kids, and that's what we're trying to teach. We're trying to teach them to respect the game, respect the jersey that they're wearing, respect the officials. If an official makes a bad call, he's a dude too, and he's going to make a bad call. That's why you got to coach. Let the coach talk to the officials. They can sort it out.
Hold on. I've seen you play hockey. This is not how things go. Well, Doug, you're not wearing the C on your sweater, so you're not allowed to go talk to the official. You still talk to the official all game.
Well, just as I skate by.
Yeah, but I'll give you this. You're consistent about it. And that's all Bobby Orr's asking.
Just respect the game. As an individual, you don't have to play. Like if you got a guy that's better than you on your team, you don't play to his level. You play to your level, and you make sure you play to your level game in and game out, because that's all the coach wants. Coach puts you on the bench for a reason, and he wants you to be consistent game in and game out, so that when he puts you out there, he knows what he's going to get back.
I would read this book. Certainly I would read it over the Colton Orr book that has not been written yet, but or Not My Story. There's a lot of Bobby Orr books out there, and I'm not necessarily a huge reader, but apparently this is the first one he's ever authorized and written. So
he's authorized and written.
Worth a look.
It took him 8 months to put the outline of a book together before he took it to a publisher. That's how much time he's invested in the book. Yeah. And then he wrote it after those 8 months.
We should get him on the show. Bobby Orr, that's an easy get, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. He could be right there on that couch.
Ooh.
You're listening to The Hockey Podcast. Feel free to email comments or questions to the show at our email address, thehockeypodcast@gmail.com.
Final segment, news and notes. Marty Biron might be hosting the show next week as he is out of the NHL. How quickly did this happen?
Well, actually, my 16-year-old told me this morning.
Okay.
He goes, Dad, Marty Biron. I went, what?
Yeah, you didn't even believe him, did you?
No, I didn't. And so then now my head goes into gear 2. I was like, well, who the heck's going to back up Lindquist?
Oh, I've got the answer for you.
Who is it?
Jason Messiaen.
Oh, yeah, he's really good.
Yeah.
Who is Jason Messiaen?
Look, I don't know what the Rangers are doing, so let me get into this right now. Henrik Lundqvist, in my opinion, so do not get this next sentence confused or mixed up, or if I was a rapper, twisted, is the best goalie in the world. However, how much of this success he's had over the last couple of years has been partially, even just a little bit, because of the system John Tortorella had his guys playing in front of him, blocking every shot. Because Lundqvist and the Rangers don't look good right now at all. And it seems like Marty Biron was kind of the fall guy and got sent down to the AHL. And just to wrap up his story, he's been in this league for a while. He's a vet. He doesn't need to go back to the AHL. And
he's 36 years old. He's been playing for 16 years.
Yeah, he's had a good career.
And
so he called it quits once he went down there. And that's understandable.
He was in that 9-2 melee that, Hurdle had the 4 goals.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a shame that really his last kind of moment in the NHL is that goal by Hurdle.
And then, was that his last one? I thought he played after that.
He did play after that, but that's the last one anybody's going to remember.
Right.
So,
I think his last game he let in like 4 off his 17 shots.
He could have played 10 more years, and that's the last one people
But I think
remember.
it goes back to what you originally said. There was a system in front of those netminders. I don't know if we got that right now.
I mean, the Rangers at this exact moment are 2-5. They have a win over LA where Jonathan Quick basically scored a goal for them, the winning goal in that game. And then they have a 2-0 shutout win over Washington, who's also struggling. But, they've been shut out by Anaheim, shut out by New Jersey, gave up 6 goals to Anaheim, 9 to San Jose. They were pretty thoroughly dominated by Phoenix and St. Louis. Now, the one thing about the Rangers is they've played 7 games. They've all been on the road.
Yeah, they got a goal differential of -18.
New coach, completely different system. It's going to take time to kind of work things in. But Henrik Lundqvist right now, a 3.45 goals against average. Now, again, he's going to finish this year as one of the best goalies in the NHL. I don't doubt that. I just wonder if that old system was helping him at all. Because up until this year, I didn't think it was. I thought it was helping the Rangers, that they were blocking shots and winning 2-1 games. But I also thought, and part of my reason for always picking the Rangers to go deep was that if they got into a tough situation, Lundqvist would just bail them out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder why. I mean, when do they get to play at home?
Because they're renovating Madison Square Garden.
Ew.
They've still got a couple more road games here. So they'll be on the road in Philadelphia and Detroit. And then Monday, October 28th, so still 8 more days from now, they will play their first home game of the season.
Wow.
And then right back out on the road. So I'm sure that's not helping.
They're sitting one spot ahead of Columbus.
Yeah, one spot behind New Jersey, which I'm sure makes them feel very good. So interesting that Marty Biron waived another goalie making news for a different reason on Saturday night.
Mikey Smith.
Look, Tomas Hertl had the goal of the year, and I don't think anything's going to beat that all year, but I think we've already found number 2, and it's a very close number 2.
Yeah, because there was basically no time left on the clock. He takes the puck, gloves it, puts it down, and gets a shot off.
Through traffic. There was a ton of players in front of him against Detroit to cap a 5-goal rally against Detroit.
Right.
So when you put it in the context of earlier in that game, he was down 2-0. There was a point in the game where it looked like he might be hurt. And then all of a sudden, the Coyotes score 5 in a row, and he scores the 5th one.
It was
a nice goal.
It was very pretty. It was like end to end, down the middle. I mean, like right down the middle. It arced. He had an arc on it where it just arced over everybody's head. I can't remember the player, but even one of the Detroit guys stuck his stick in the air to try to bat it down.
Yeah, you just take the stoppage play or whatever, the penalty.
Right.
That was great. And in typical Coyotes fashion, less than a tenth of a second left on the clock as it goes over. I mean, that was first it was as it was in the air, everybody's going crazy, like, wait a minute, this has a chance to go in the goal. And then the thought is the clock might catch this before the puck gets into the net.
And back to that club and consistency. If you want consistency, that's the club to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody counted them out. First 8 minutes, they're down 2-0, and that team never gives up. I've watched their games, and that team never gives up. They just keep on coming. They don't always have success, but they always keep on coming, and you've got a fight on your hand from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. That team is relentless.
They are a tough team to beat, and for all the success they've had under Dave Tippett, they tend to start seasons not so well. They start a little slow, and then they get better as the year goes on. I'm sure they will continue to get better as this year goes on, but they're 5-2-2 right now, and 4-0-2 in their last 6, and the 2 losses were overtime and shootout. I mean, they're just a tough team to play right now. Mike Smith's the reason why. Him getting that goal.
That was awesome.
Seriously, we're 3 weeks in. We may already know the top 2 goals. We may have already seen them for the whole season.
Okay, so I always bring things back to my world.
Okay.
I'm up bright and early this morning. I'm at the rink, and I'm watching my U16 son's team play. What does the goalie do? The first thing he does?
Sure.
First thing, he steps on the ice, he stands on the goal line, he calls for a puck, and he takes a shot down ice.
How many young goalies around this continent were doing that today?
Oh, absolutely, in practice, yeah. And all the coaches are going, don't do that.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. Smith waited till they were up by 2 and there was less than 2 seconds left to do it. Because if you screw that up as a goalie and it costs you.
Yeah, if it's an icing and it comes back.
And it's a 1-goal game.
Yeah.
And your coach will. Yeah, so that was, again, just another highlight. I mean, there's been so many highlights early on this season. How about Sean Monahan in Calgary? We have to talk about him because he was in that group of players that highly drafted player, the number 6 overall pick this past June, comes into training camp and it's kind of like, yeah, look, we want to see what you can do, but you're going back to junior, which, by the way, junior for him is, I believe, the London Knights, which is where all these players apparently go.
Is he with the Knights or the Generals?
No, he might be
67s.
I'm thinking of Ole Mata,
yeah,
and Bo Horvat, and Max Domi.
Yeah, Mata, he's not. Penguins have decided to keep him up.
How do the London Knights ever lose a game?
They usually don't.
Oh, okay.
But anyways,
I've never been wrong
7
on this podcast or ever before.
7 games in the NHL. 19.
5 goals, 3 assists.
8 points in 7 games, and he's only got a -1.
He leads Calgary in scoring. Calgary is actually, they're not great, but they're 3-2-2. I mean, I think a lot of people, including myself, thought they might win 15 games all year.
I think you're going to see Calgary make the same decision Pittsburgh made, and he's going to stay.
You have to keep him.
You have to.
Here's the thing with Calgary. If you're really going to sell hockey to your fans and say, we are rebuilding, and the best thing about this situation is that young players can come here and start a career, he is now your poster boy. He is starting his career. So what if he's only 19? He's already performing. You can't send him down now. And the other thing is, it's not like he's on Detroit, and if we don't send him down, he's going to be playing on the third line here, and he's not going to get enough ice time. Like Bo Horvat in Vancouver, Max Domi with the Coyotes, they got sent down because they weren't ready just yet to play against top 6 forwards in the NHL. He's their best player in Calgary. He's going to play top 6 minutes.
Right.
So they have to keep him up, I would assume.
I wouldn't send him down right now. It's too soon. Unless he just implodes, there's no reason to suspect that he's going to do any worse than he's doing now. I mean, 8 points in 7 games for a 19-year-old player. He's doing all right. Doing better than Nail.
That hair is a little out of control, though.
Yeah, it needs a little dippity-do there.
It's tough to have hair that's out of control in the world of hockey, but that's a little craziness. The top of this draft class is already performing. It's ridiculous. And Nathan McKinnon's off to a great start. Alexander Barkov just scored his 3rd goal the other night. Monahan and your boy Seth Jones.
Oh,
game-winning goal the other night.
He had the game winner. 8 games, 4 points. Defenseman.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
4 points.
Shocking that you would bring him up.
And a +1.
He's in a good situation playing with Shea Weber.
Yeah, but I mean, he's proving that these young guys deserve the shot that they're given.
If you're Tampa Bay, are you frustrated at all that Jonathan Drouin's not even in the NHL this year?
I don't understand why he was sent back.
I mean, I wasn't privy to Tampa Bay training camp like I was with other teams.
Neither was I, but I'm still thinking to myself that
they're kind of rebuilding too.
Yeah, and they do. With LeCavier gone,
yeah, there's a spot open.
There's a spot open, and this kid can score. And I watched him in the Mem Cup.
Yeah.
Oh my! This kid has hands, and he can play. I didn't see him in the
training camp,
so I don't know.
I mean, it's never the wrong decision to send an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old back to junior for another year of seasoning. So
yeah, it's not going to hurt them.
Typical year, I don't think Tampa Bay would be frustrated at all. But if you're a Lightning fan, you're looking at the top of this draft, and everybody around him is playing and making an impact.
Plus, Tampa's proven me wrong because I thought he was going to stay.
I thought for sure. I mean, I thought they drafted him there was talk they were going to skate him with Stamkos and St. Louis.
I thought Drouin, Jones, and McKinnon were the 3 that would stick.
Instead, Barkov is playing well, and now Monahan already 5 goals, 3 assists. The rookies are doing what they were supposed to do.
Exactly.
Really probably ahead of time.
Yeah, I agree.
Teams that aren't doing what they're supposed to do, I just feel like it's a typical segment we have to talk about Philadelphia.
We always end up on Philly.
Well, they are comic relief at this point.
Okay, so Philadelphia used to have this goaltender.
Okay.
And his name was Ilya Bryzgalov.
Oh, tell me more.
And he was making a lot of money.
Oh, he still is. Don't say was.
He signed a contract with $10 million a year.
They have the worst record in the NHL right now. Mm-hmm. They are 1-7. They have 2 points. They've fired their coach. I believe their one victory is over Florida. Yeah, their one victory is a 2-1 win over Florida. Philadelphia Flyers, and we'll get back to Bryzgalov in a second. I'm not saying he wasn't part of the problem. The Flyers have not scored more than 2 goals in a game all year.
Well, they have a goal differential of -13. And that one game they won was a home game.
Yeah, it was Berube's first game behind the bench, and it was against Florida. Nothing against Florida, but they're not top of the road. Look, here's their goal total. And I know it's early, and I know that you can't say, oh, look at their record. It's 75, 74 more games. That's fine. But there is clearly an issue when your goal total is 1-1-1, 2-1, 2-2-1.
Yeah, that's not good.
You're not going to win hockey games. You have to be able to score. And when you go down your lineup and you have Claude Giroux and Jakub Voracek and Vinny Lecavalier and Braden Shen and Wayne Simmons, it makes no sense why they can't score. I've said this before, this is a team that was winning hockey games against the Penguins in the playoffs 15 months ago, 8-7 and 9-6.
Maybe they need Brzgalov back.
To kind of just open up the ice. Maybe they need Fleury back on the other end of the ice. Actually,
I know Brzgalov.
He shut him down too.
Brzgalov turned down an NHL team according to his agent, so he's available.
If I was an NHL player, I don't know that I'd let my agent talk. So Ilya Brzgalov trains with the Las Vegas Wranglers of the ECHL. They start their season, so I guess he wasn't going to play in the ECHL. And yeah, his agent says he's already had one offer from an NHL team already, but passed on it because he's waiting for the right deal.
But now he's going to go back to his home in New Jersey and train there. So the ECHL was just for training purposes. It wasn't for a spot.
He didn't catch on with the KHL team. I mean, we don't know the whole story. Maybe he doesn't want to go back to Russia, but he has sounded in the past like he's somebody that wouldn't mind going back to Russia.
I think he could make a lot of money.
Either way, he's getting paid by Philadelphia for
True.
the foreseeable future.
Right.
And I love the quote of when he took the Wranglers out for breakfast, quote, courtesy of the Flyers, unquote. So he could do that with pretty much the entire city of Las Vegas.
The rest of his life.
I don't know. Let's play this game. What NHL team was it that apparently made him an offer? I can't think of one.
Edmonton.
Maybe. Do you want him there influencing all your young players?
You know what? I don't think he would influence young players. I think they would laugh at him.
I don't have a problem with Brzgalov as a person. I do think he's
quirky.
He's partially misunderstood, and if he's performing,
There's
then,
a song there.
Yeah, well, okay. If he's performing on the ice, then all is forgiven. He hasn't gotten in trouble off the ice.
It's just ironic that he demands a $10 million. Philadelphia gives him the big $50 million deal or whatever the end result was, and he just doesn't perform.
Well, the ultimate irony.
And he's making Don Maloney look like a genius.
Yeah. No, I mean, one guy is in charge of his team, and somebody in Philadelphia is just spending money fairly frivolously.
And there's the problem in Philly.
Well, the other problem is not only did they bring in Brzgalov and pay out all that money, they got rid of Sergei Bobrovsky to open up the number one spot, and he promptly won the Vezina. So Philadelphia has made some bad decisions to get to this point.
But we never... Why is it happening? What is wrong with this club or this franchise?
Apparently it's not the coach.
There's a lot of There's a lot of talent on that bench. So then I start looking upward, and I look to the GM's office, and then I look above the GM's office and ownership. And I watched a press conference, and I talked about it last week, where Mr. Snyder vehemently defended Holmgren.
Yeah, I'm not ever going to call for somebody's job.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if that's the problem, then that's where you got to look, and that's what you got to fix. How you fix it's up to you. But something is not right in Denmark.
Didn't see that coming. If I'm Paul Holmgren, I'm a little nervous now.
I would be.
They still have plenty of time to turn it around. But if they don't turn it around, who else can go at the end of the year? They're not going to just flush all these players. And they've already fired the coach.
You fired the coach in 3 games.
And the owner's spending money.
And now you're 8 games in. The owner's giving you as a GM what you need and allowing you to do what you need to do, and it's not working.
Yeah,
I would be very, very nervous.
And I will fully admit, and this is probably part of his problem, I don't know why it isn't working. On paper, that should be a good team.
This would be a solid team.
Steve Mason is playing good in net, which is probably a surprise to a lot of people. Before we go, I have to throw these 2 facts out at you.
Okay.
1, Toronto Maple Leafs celebrate their wins by listening to Miley Cyrus in the locker room, so good luck with that.
What song?
It doesn't matter. They're all the same.
Yeah, it does.
No, it doesn't. No team has ever
It's not
won the
Wrecking
Stanley
Ball,
Cup.
is it?
No team has ever won the Stanley Cup listening to Miley Cyrus in the locker room. That's a given. And second of all, call back to a previous show, there was hybrid icing controversy this week.
Yes, there was.
And it cost Toronto a game. So there's the ultimate hockey karma and irony coming back to you, Doug Cannon. I was right. Still like the rule, like you, but there will be controversy, and there definitely was this week. That is it for episode 21. Join us next week as we check in on our favorite underachievers and follow up on some more impressive rookies.
And THPers, Nail Yakupov did get a point this week, so stay tuned and we'll bring you his new tally next week.
Too late, I already dropped them. Plus, whatever else happens in the next 7 days. Thanks for listening to The Hockey Podcast.